As example number 947 as to why gravel is so hot right now, I present to you Exhibit A. This man, Nicolas Roche, a man who needs no introduction. How are you, sir? Good to see you.
Hi, how are you? Good to see you too.
Thanks for being here with us. For a bit of introduction, for those who may not know, this is an extremely talented athlete, Olympian, multi-time national champion, rode, what, 24 Grand Tours, won stages of Vuelta, multi-time top 10th Vuelta, on and on and on and on. And now has parlayed that into a couple different careers. Cycling commentator, you've probably heard him around the world calling bike races. And the man can still pedal a bike and still enjoys pedaling a bike. So I'm hoping you can tell us a couple things. Tell us about your bike and then tell us about your passion for gravel. So here we are at Belgian Waffle Ride Arizona.
Yep.
What is the bike du jour, monsieur?
So the setup, let's start with the frame, Bianchi Impulso Pro, which is very similar to the cyclocross frame, so very race aggressive frame. It's not really, there's not big flanks where you can fit 45s, for example. You're kind of limited with your tire choice.
Yes.
But I enjoyed it rides very aggressive and it rides very similar to road frame, so kind of it's not a big jump for me. Mm-hmm. Then in terms of setup, well, I'm using the SRAM Red double chain ring with a 48-35 and then a 10-36 in the back. Ideally, I think on some races I might use even a 40 or 44 sprocket in the back, just to have that little kind of security for on the way back when the legs are really tired.
Sure. Have you tried a 1x ring?
I have,
you prefer it to?
So this is it's kind of the eternal battle, isn't it?
Yes.
And last year I've tried the 46 and I used the 1052, which is an amazing setup.
Yes.
The only thing is I realized that a lot of times the 46 is a little bit short on those flatter course. And especially from road where you're not really used, well, I'm not really used to the high cadence. I'm still kind of old school where I kind of grind at like 80 cadence.
Yes.
The 46 was just too small for me.
Yes.
And actually now I'm even considering putting a 50 or 52 chain ring, but trying to have more sprockets in the back. So yes, it's going to be heavier setup, but I think, you know, that's one thing I discovered with gravel is everyone has their own preference in setup. There's not one right or one wrong. I think even depending on the course, it changes.
Sure. Yeah, that's one thing I love asking people about it, because like tires is a perfect example. Mm-hmm. Exact same course, you ask 10 people, you'll get 10 answers as to what the best tire is. So, speaking of, what are you running here?
So I'm riding 38s, but they actually size 40. Thank you to the rim and then also to the inliners that Victoria use. And I went for mix. It's gonna be dry. When I did the recon on Thursday of the first part, it was very mucky. I just had snowed.
Yes.
Surprisingly enough, I can guarantee when I landed, I got a text from my brother saying he's just landed and he was supposed to land 5 hours before me because he flew through London.
Yes.
And he got deviated to Vegas because of the snowstorm. And I was like, really?
Like, are we going to the right place?
Exactly.
I thought this was
I took shorts.
What are we doing? Yeah.
I was planning to spend time crashing the pool, not wearing jumpers.
Maybe some nice photos though, like with the white assless long sleeve jersey and the snow on the side of the trail.
It was quite epic, and cactus with the snow on the side. It was on. Put it that way, I'm not quite as comfortable as some of the mountain bikers on those single tracks, so I'm going to go for the grippier, sticky version tires rather than go for kind of slicks or something that are more fast. And yes, I might have to push a bit harder on the road, but for me at this point, especially on race number 1, it's about safety.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, keeping it upright is always faster than if you're
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. I'd rather lose a couple of seconds on the downhill and touch wood or carbon that I don't spend a couple of minutes taking out these cactus pins out of my arms.
Yeah. When we go to pick up our race numbers, there's hair combs in the bag as a means to pull choya out of your arms or legs.
I was that was also
knock on wood, that's not happening.
No, that's something that made me laugh when I saw it, because I was warned by some when I said I was coming here. I got some local riders who DM'd me and says, bring your cactus comb. I said, cactus comb? What's that, you know?
Right.
And yeah, it seems to be real. It's the real deal.
Yeah, it's a real thing. How similar is your geometry on this bike to geometry from your road bike from your World Tour racing days?
So it's quite similar. Apart that I have a shorter stem. I rode a 135 on the road.
Yep.
And I ride a 120 on this bike. I think also the geometry of this frame, it's a bit of a longer top tube than what I had on my latest road frame. So that's about it in terms of measurements. I think they work out more or less the same, apart that I'm a tiny bit shorter. And I have a bit more setback, where on the road I was a bit more aggressive. I think I was at like 6.5, now I'm 7.5, so 1 centimeter back, but also 1 centimeter shorter. Just because I also feel that I was finally capable of getting a bit more seated power, which is needed on the gravel, where on the road I was always out of the saddle. I was someone that liked climbing out of the saddle, hence the longer stem for not putting my knees in the bars.
What is your attraction to racing gravel? Is it, are you like me, you're just a joiner, it's what the kids are doing, so you're coming along, or what attracted you to it, and what do you find yourself enjoying or not enjoying now? So
there was a bit of a transition when last winter I went back to Ireland to do Dancing with the Stars, the reality show, and or the dance contest, because they don't like it calling to a reality show. And
how'd you do?
I went 10 weeks out of 12, so I was kind of proud of myself, because I didn't know a left foot from a right foot, so and like a cyclist, absolutely no coordination, like trying to move one arm one way, one arm the other way, and thinking of where my eyes is and looking for the camera and trying to be on time with the music. I could not do that. And what happened was I was working with an Irish brand at the time, and they were doing a custom-made frame for me, and it took a bit of time, and they had a gravel bike that was available. So it's like, all right, Nico, until your bike is ready, just go and use your gravel. And Ireland, December, January is not great, so a gravel bike worked as a kind of winter bike.
Sure.
So I hadn't gone onto the gravel, and I kind of just rode the gravel bike on the road, just because I only had a very limited time between the trainings for the dancing, that I didn't want to go and puncture in the middle of nowhere and be late for my dance class, or as funny as it sounds. But anyway, I got my gravel bike, and in April I was coming back from Ireland back to south of France in Monaco, and my brother was like, oh look, there's this UCI World Series in Millau in France in 2 months time, we should go and do that. And I was like, okay, that sounds like something, boys weekend, take a little hotel, go and spend 2 days together, grab a pizza and a local IPA, and go and ride my bike next morning with him. And then I went there, and I had a month of training, because I was literally almost 3.5 months just doing maybe 4 or 5 hours a week, so very little training on the bike, but I was doing 20 hours of dancing and a couple of 10K runs. And I got this gig with Bianchi, and I went off and did their Giro Reflection series, and I was following the Giro, but not on the actual stages. So we went, and if the stage was in Naples, for example, I was there in Naples, but I didn't just ride the stage. We went up this other famous climb to see this cathedral and talk about the local food. It was more of almost like a holiday kind of tourist video rather than a cycling thing. But every day there was a different bike. I was using the aero bike, I used the gravel bike, I used their city bikes, the mountain e-bike on Mount Etna, which is great. And then I was like, okay, now I've trained for a few days, for a whole month. I should be, I won't say competitive, but enough that I can have a bit of fun.
Yeah.
And surprisingly enough, I was quite in good shape with a month's training, but not having the technique, not having the tire pressure right, not really the right setup. Put it that way, I had 3 flats in 15 kilometers. One I changed, and the next one I had a double, and then that was it. And I had to finish in the car. I managed to go down this last section onto the road, and there was a couple there that were waiting for their son to pass by a couple of minutes behind me. He says, look, when he passes by, just truck your bike. So my first gravel experience ended up with a DNF and a car drive all the way back to the finish. Lucky enough, it was only about 10K to go. The encouraging thing, I was fighting for top 10, and I was enjoying it. I was saying, oh, actually, you know what? I could work on my post-racing career, stay fit, have a lot of fun, do stuff with my brother that got me into gravel, because he loved gravel. He's a gravel guide in south of France on weekends, Sundays. He takes groups out for gravel rides, and he does all the backpacking stuff. So he was the one that kind of introduced me to gravel. And I think it was like, okay, it'd be cool to do something with my brother. I've been on the road for so much, doing my kind of own thing. So that led to something else where on the Giro I met this guy who looks after the it's called Nuovo Eroica. There's actually 1 or 2 in the US now.
Sure.
And I was on 2 months training, and it was one where they couldn't close the road. So what they do is they do it by segments. So they had 7 time segments,
neutralized,
and then you neutralize the road.
Race the next one.
Yeah,
yes.
Which was quite cool because none of us had support. So we just stopped, and it was 38, 40 degrees, Tuscany heat. It was roasting.
Yeah.
And so we were a group of about 7 or 8 in the front after the first segment, and we just stopped and said, all right, give each other 5 minutes, grab some water, grab a banana, whatever we need.
Yeah.
And then just roll to the next one. And then when we hit the next one, it was like being press go and bam, sprinted for that 5 or 10K. Some of them were even half an hour long, so they were proper segments.
Yes.
And unfortunately, I lost it only by 2 seconds, but on a mechanical, and I was like, I'm actually not too bad at it. And then obviously, this is like European, and I tried to go and do some of them with my brother again after the tour. So the good thing about doing comms is I was starting about 12:30, 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
So every morning I'd go and do 3 to 4 hours. So I was getting about 18, 20 hour weeks. And level of fitness kind of came back up. And I found that it was actually people were saying, how do you do 4 hours on the bike and then go and do 7 hours of comms?
Yeah.
And I felt that I needed it. I got to the commentary booth and I was ready to go. I was thinking about the stage. I also rode every day because we go from finish to finish.
Yes.
So I rode every day the last 25, 30K, and also helped me when I was doing comms because I knew what side of the roundabout to take. I knew how, the real feeling of the road. So I enjoyed that because it helped me during comms, and also I was awake, I was sharp.
Got your endorphins going, your blood
exactly,
flowing.
and I was just a happy man doing my comms.
Yeah.
And after that, I started looking, saying, I want to have a go at the US, and I hadn't had a holiday in 2 years, plus COVID.
Yep.
And I was like, well, this year I wasn't really feeling I wanted a holiday, but I was like, I mean, if I make 2 in one go, if I go to America and do 2 weeks in America, just cruising around the Midwest,
yep.
It's kind of a holiday, isn't it?
Yeah.
So a lot of people consider that a holiday. And yes, I'm going racing. Yes, I'm going to do Big Sugar and BWR Kansas. But I'm going on a road trip. This is cool. So I kind of get ready for that, and I trained for that and enjoyed it. And then I started talking to some of my sponsors. I said, look, I want to commit and race next year, and I can't do 40 races, but I'll commit to 18 to 20 races. And I think the best way to do it is create a little team. So there's 3 of us. There's myself, my brother, and a young French girl, Justine, who's unfortunately she couldn't come this time. And I was like, all right, let's get the 3 of us. And also meant for sponsors when I'm here in the US, they can race in Europe as well. So I can use both, because I think there's always something about the UCI versus the kind of American gravel. It feels this is kind of the simplified debate or tension or whatever you want to call it. But the reality is there's not much happening in Europe, and you kind of need those races. And I think also, I'm lucky I can take a flight and come to the US and enjoy this experience. But not everyone can take a flight and go to the US 5 times a year and do these races.
Of course.
But they also want to get a feel of this gravel racing like everybody else.
Absolutely.
So I think I think the fact that it's developing very quickly in Europe is cool, and it's great to see that some of the American franchise are looking into doing events in Europe and bringing that kind of vibe to Europe. It's going to take years, but it's great that you have that going. So this idea of a team was like, okay, I can go and do these races in the US, and then my brother and Justine can come to 1 or 2 races, and then they can do the European scene too.
Sure. I mean, that's one of the things I love about gravel is how you get a unique taste for the place, whether it's like the literal taste of the food in Phoenix will be different than when you're in Stillwater, Oklahoma for Mid-South is different than racing in France or Germany.
Totally, or even Texas in a couple of months' time. And this is actually one of the posts that I just did this morning. You often see people when they're
in the hockey rink somewhere.
Yeah. So yesterday I was like, it's the first time my brother travels outside of Europe, and I was like, you're not going, like, if I can share an experience with you of an American sports So we started looking on Google. We just went through everything, even if it was university stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, oh, ice hockey. Well, I actually didn't think about ice hockey,
Yeah.
but you know, like the
especially in Arizona.
Yeah. So anyway, we booked that at lunchtime yesterday, and so we stayed in Scottsdale then for the whole afternoon. And went to the match and then drove here last night.
Yeah.
And he was thrilled because it's just like in the movies, you know. But and it's funny because you know you're all used to it here, but for us coming from Europe, it's just like what we see on TV, you know.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, like the first time I went and covered the Tour of Ireland, being in an Irish pub, I was just. And everybody's speaking with the Irish brogue, and I was.
Did you understand anything?
Half to some, but yeah, I was just blown away by it. It's just enjoying being a tourist. And
so of course like you were saying about the experience, is about everything, tasting the local food, and even like yesterday we went for Arizona wine tasting in the center in Scottsdale. I really love my wine, and I'm always very curious when I go in different wine regions, which I admit I didn't know until yesterday that Arizona had produced their wine.
Nor did I.
And it was just nice. We just had our little lunch break, and we did this pairing, three wines and 3 glasses, and then it was like, okay, cool, let's go and chill and wait for the match in the afternoon.
Yeah, nice. Well, best of luck to you. You got
Thank you very much.
Belgian Waffle Ride Arizona. You got Mid-South, and then I'll put a link to Nicolas's team in the description below, so you can follow along as they're doing races all around the world.
Cheers.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks very much.
See you down the road.
See you down the road.